Legend has it that Nostradamus predicted its own demise, as well as the exact night it would occur. But just how this prophecy transpired is entirely different from the 16th century Frenchman's usual forecasts. Nostradamus predicted 942 futures in his 1555 book, The Prophecies. Many consider him a lunatic, a fraud, a liar, and other much worse names. But there are some who think that he was right. In this new series, we shall show you not only the original prophecies, but also animations explaining why some reckon Nostradamus was onto something. His predictions, written as obscure short poems called quatrains, are interpreted by some as the word of God. But whether he is an ages-old prophet or a medieval quack, we shall leave that up to you. The death of King Henry II of France. The following quatrain is believed to foretell the death of Henry II of France in 1559. He was the King of France while Nostradamus was alive. It reads, "The young lion will overcome the older one. On the field of combat in a single battle, he will pierce his eyes through a golden cage. 2 wounds made 1, then he dies a cruel death." In the summer of 1559, Henry II took part in a jousting tournament in celebration of 2 royal weddings. During his 3rd match, he took on the captain of his Scottish Guard, Gabriel de Montgomery. Both men rode toward each other, and Montgomery struck him in the shoulder. The strike to Henry splintered his joust. As it broke, some shards flew through the visor and into Henry's face. These hurt his eyes and right temple. The king later died 10 days later from a brain abscess. And this might just be how Nostradamus predicted it. Let's look once again at his forecast. The young lion will overcome the older one. The references to the young and old lion could be Gabriel and Henry respectively. On the field of combat in a single battle. This perhaps refers to the jousting tournament. He will pierce his eyes through a golden cage. And this part could be referring to the wooden splinters that entered Henry II's eyes and temple. 2 wounds made 1, then he dies a cruel death. Henry II died from a cerebral abscess 10 days after the injury, a most painful death indeed. While some of this is eerily on point, there may be more to it. A 2015 research paper from the Survey of Ophthalmology notes that Henry II's wound was not examined right away, but that wooden fragments were found later in the orbit of the skull. This suggests an infection may have traveled from the eye socket to Henry II's brain. And that, historians, would have been a painful, and some might say, cruel death. So, one more time, let's look at this prediction by Nostradamus. The young lion will overcome the older one. On the field of combat in a single battle, he will pierce his eyes through a golden cage. 2 wounds made 1, then he dies a cruel death. Was Nostradamus onto something with this one? Did he foretell the death of a king? Or was his quatrain all a mere coincidence? We shall leave that up to you. Henry II of France was born in 1519 and made king in July 1547. His wife Catherine de' Medici was a big fan of Nostradamus and his works. She believed in what Nostradamus did and even enlisted him into the service of the French royal family. Catherine herself was said to be fascinated by astrology and prophecies. so it's no surprise that she held large admiration for Nostradamus. The Queen sought his counsel and had him draw up horoscopes for her children. He also served as the physician of her son, Charles IX, a future King of France. And while Nostradamus may have foretold the demise of a French king, many also say he also foresaw so much more. Nostradamus, the French Revolution. The following quatrain is believed to foretell a time of great change in France, that in turn sparked a period of worldwide transformation. It reads, "Songs, chants, and refrains of the slavish mob, whilst the princes and king are captive in prison, shall be received in the future as oracles divine, by headless idiots deprived of judgment." France, 1789. The air is strong with revolt. The French common folk are sick and tired of working for a pittance, while those in power get fat and line their pockets. Change, historians, is coming. Back then, the French populace was divided into three groups. These were the First Estate, church elders, the Second Estate, the nobility, and the Third Estate, the common folk. They were the majority and paid most of the taxes, while the rich got the best jobs. But change is afoot. The nation is struggling. The economy is poor, and the year's harvest is for naught. France's King Louis XVI wants higher taxation, but is met with demands for change. July 14th, 1789. Paris, France. A mob of violent revolutionaries conquer the Bastille, a prison and royal power symbol. The mob backs representatives from the Third Estate, known as the National Assembly. The group negotiates more rights for the common folk. The assembly soon starts running the country. Let's look once again at Nostradamus' forecast. Songs, chants, and refrains of the slavish mob. This may refer to the revolution itself and the common folk who demanded change. Whilst the princes and king are captive in prison, shall be received in the future as oracles divine, by headless idiots deprived of judgment. All of these next three lines may refer to what happened afterward. Glorified terror had taken hold of the country. In 1793, King Louis XVI, along with his wife Marie Antoinette, and the royal family are imprisoned. Later that year, both the king and queen lose their heads to the guillotine. During that same year, Maximilien Robespierre was made the head of the Committee of Public Safety. Vague legislation called the Law of Suspects is passed. It allows for the imprisonment and extermination of threats to the revolutionary government. Robespierre used this law to annihilate thousands. He wholeheartedly believed that he was just in his actions, as evidenced by the 1794 quote. If the basis of popular government in peacetime is virtue, the basis of popular government during a revolution is both virtue and terror. Virtue, without which terror is baneful. Terror, without which virtue is powerless. Terror is nothing more than speedy, severe, and inflexible justice. This lasted until 1799, when a statesman by the name of Napoleon Bonaparte took power. And his reign over France is another event Nostradamus is also said to have predicted. Nostradamus, Napoleons Rise. Nostradamus lived in 16th century France, almost 300 years before the birth of Napoleon. Yet, he made the following prediction in his 1555 book, The Prophecies. Here it is. Poe, nay, Laurent, more fire than blood. Swimming in praise, the great man hurries to the confluence. He will refuse entry to the magpies. Pimpon and Durance will confine them. Let's break that down. The first three words of that quatrain are Po, Ne, and Laurent. Some say this is an anagram for Napoleons Rise. Roi in Old French supposedly means king. So, we have King Napoleon. The next part, more fire than blood, may be in relation to the fact that Napoleon was not of French nobility and waged war across Europe. Let's look at the history. The Mediterranean, 1798. Napoleon Bonaparte has shot right up to the top of the French army and decides Egypt should belong to France. The French invade and take over the North African nation, angering the British in the process. This gives Napoleon a major boost in popularity back in France. Paris, 1799. 10 years after the 1789 revolution, France is ready to upend itself once more. The nation is bankrupt, and the French are growing impatient. They're governed by the Directory, a body comprised of the Council of 500 and Council of Ancients. Napoleon is supposed to follow the Directory's orders, but little do they know, he has machinations of his own. Napoleon makes a pact with Emmanuel Joseph Sieyès, a Council of 500 director. Napoleon's brother and council speaker Lucien also joins the alliance, along with several others. They plan to overthrow the Directory and seize power. Sieyès thinks he'll rule. He doesn't know how wrong he is. The Directory gets warning of a planned coup d'etat from Lucien and flee to safety in the Paris suburbs. Except, this is a trap, and they took the bait hook, line, and sinker. For you see, Napoleon was their guard. Over the next few days, the would-be king and his allies acquired power from the councils, and not long after, Napoleon and his troops stormed their chambers. In the days that followed, France's future became clear. Napoleon wrote the next constitution and was elected first consul in 1799. Over the next few years, he consolidated his power even further, and in 1804, he made himself Emperor of the French. Did Nostradamus see all of this coming? Who knows? But he's said to have predicted so much more. Did Nostradamus predict his own death? He's said to have predicted many events and legends that came to be centuries after his demise, including the Great Fire of London in 1666, the rise of Napoleon, and the French Revolution. But even Nostradamus could not escape the bony hands of death. The Last Prophecy. Unlike Nostradamus' other prophecies, conveyed as short poems, this one is rather simple and not hidden in allegory. It goes, "You will not find me alive at sunrise." This is believed to have been said to his secretary one summer evening in 1566. Sure enough, the next morning, Michel de Nostradam was no more. What killed Nostradamus? Nostradamus suffered from a very severe case of gout for years. This condition is a type of arthritis characterized by severe pain, swelling, and tender joints. Most commonly, it occurs near the big toe. This made movement very difficult for the Nostradamus, causing him much pain. In late June of 1566, aged 62, Nostradamus called on his lawyers to make up a comprehensive will, outlining who his property and money would go to. His condition worsened, though, over the following weeks. The Frenchman knew his destiny would soon arrive. Nostradamus' gout went untreated and soon turned into a deadly case of edema. That is when excess fluids gather within the body's tissues, and that, it is believed, really hurt his heart. Before retiring for the evening on July the 1st, 1566, Nostradamus told his secretary, "You will not find me alive at sunrise." He was found dead the next day. It is thought he died due to congestive heart failure brought about by his worsening condition. Nostradamus' health. According to Harvard Health, gout was once a disease of kings and may have been prevalent in royal families throughout the world. It was brought about by excess eating and drinking. Nowadays, the condition is much more common and can be treated with medication. Unfortunately, 16th century France did not have the medical science we have today, and that was bad news for Nostradamus. The astrologer was a wealthy man at the time of his death, but is not said to have indulged in excess. He is believed to have been an advocate of a low-fat diet. So, what could have caused his poor health? Well, one factor that has been linked to gout in royals is exposure to lead acetate, otherwise known as lead sugar. This was used to sweeten wine in olden times. Exposure to high levels of this can lead to all sorts of problems down the road. So what slew Nostradamus? Perhaps it was his health, maybe it was his diet, or maybe it was something that we don't quite understand. But did Nostradamus see it coming? Who knows? But he's said to have predicted so much more. So why not join us in the next mythical video?